a spiroindolone? Well, a spirocycle is simply two rings joined at a one-atom junction. Then therefore follows that a spiroindolone is simply a spirocycle containing an indolone ring. And over here I have shown the spiroindolone motif with the indolone ring highlighted in this pinky red color. So spirocycles and spiroindolones specifically are found in a wide variety of natural products and have been found to be an important pharmacophore in synthetic drugs. Here I've just shown some examples, and this bioactivity that they exhibit is largely a result of their favorable general properties. A pi excessive ring, going back to undergrad, is simply a heteroaromatic ring in which the heteroatoms lone pairs can resonate into the ring, thus providing an excess of pi electrons. Now, most drugs contain heterocycles, and with 59% of pharmaceutical drugs containing a nitrogen-based heterocycle, and I've just shown some examples here. Similarly, sulfur-based heterocyclic drugs have also been found in a wide variety of natural products, and they've been used as drugs successfully. And this presents an opportunity to take some nitrogen-based drugs and remake them as a thiol analog. So, onto NITD609, commonly known as spargine. It was, at the time of discovery, it was the first drug to have a novel mechanism in 25 years for the treatment of malaria, and it is currently in phase 2 clinical trials. It has a consistent IC50 value of below 10 nanomolar and could possibly result in a single dose cure. Several structure-activity relationships have been conducted around this scaffold, as shown here, where they vary the substituents. However, in literature to date, there is currently no exploration of varying the pi excessive ring within the central scaffold. And this brings me to my aim and objectives, which is to explore a literature-based route for the synthesis of a sulpargine-inspired indole-based spiroindolone, here labeled 14A, starting from simple molecule indole. Once I've explored this route, I will then apply it to benzothiophene and thiophene to afford a benzothiophene-based and thiophene-based spiroindolone. So, starting off with indole, I subjected it to a regioselected formulation to afford aldehyde 9A with a lovely yield of 63%. And I confirmed this through the presence of the singlet at about 10 ppm corresponding to the 4-mole proton. Thereafter, I took this aldehyde and subjected it to a Henry aldol condensation to afford a nitroalkene 10A in a lovely yield of 8%. Now, I was able to confirm that I had formed this nitroalkene through the presence of these phenylic signals, which have a coupling constant of 14 Hz, and confirm that it is in fact in the E configuration. Just to discuss the rather low yield, when I was monitoring the action by TLC, I consistently obtained 3 products. And I assumed that they would correspond to the starting material, a 1,2-nitrohydroxy intermediate or ALAP, and the final product 10A. And I assumed that the major product in this mixture was the intermediate. So I proceeded to take the mixture and reflux it in several different solvents, and even tried acetylating the hydroxyl group to facilitate departure and afford the nitroalkene 10A. However, this was not successful. So instead, I went ahead and isolated all 3 products by prep TLC and obtained this as my major product. Now, to you, it might not look like anything, but these signals are rather out of place. They in fact suggest the formation of a double aldol product. Now, this took a lot of head scratching, but it was confirmed. And its formation is most likely through this mechanism of microaddition, whereby the nitromethane present in excess can overreact to afford the double aldol, while the hydroxyl upon departure can re-attack and form the hydroxyl intermediate and therefore persist throughout. But I was able to obtain 10A, as I've said, and I reduced it to afford this ethylamine 11A, commonly known as tryptamine. Now, in order to obtain my spiroindolone, I need to subject it to a cyclization to afford this structure here. And this is an electrophilic aromatic substitution. In order to do this, I attempted several different conditions as shown in this table, and I found 2. One set of conditions that gave me the intermediate 13A, and another that gave me 14A in pretty good yields. So looking at 13A, I observed that every single signal is doubled up. And initially, I was a little bit confused. However, I attributed it to the fact that this imine can exist as either an E or Z configuration. And in order to confirm this, I performed a variable temperature NMR experiment. And from it, we can see that one set of peaks increases with intensity increases with the increase of temperature, while another increases with a decrease in temperature, thus confirming the groups of the signals to either the E or Z isomer. Now, in order to assign these groups to either E or Z, I had to perform a nosy NMR experiment. And simply this will show you a through space correlation, and this is important because the E isomer will show a correlation between these protons, while the Z will not, as these are not in a similar spatial environment. And so I observed a correlation underneath a peak in corresponding to this methylene set of protons here, and this confirms that all the peaks labeled group 2 are in fact the E isomer. And I did this for every peak and assigned them thereafter. Now coming back to the lovely Spiroindolone, it proceeds by this mechanism according to literature, and it is a pictet-Spengler-based electrophilic aromatic substitution. Now upon cyclization, we firstly lose this imine, but we also form a chiral center, and therefore cyclization can be confirmed through the loss of the imine band in IR, but also through the presence of these diastereotopic signals here, which are split as the result of this introduced chiral molecule. Chiral center, sorry. And so, Series A is done. So I moved on to Series B using benzothiophene as the base. And I subjected this 3-bromobenzothiophene to a formylation reaction to a formaldehyde 9B with a lovely yield of 7%. Now this low yield I attributed to a poor organolithium activation, but also I found that there was a competing side reaction between the N-butene and DMF in the mixture. Nonetheless, I was able to confirm successful formylation through the presence of a singlet at about 10 ppm corresponding to the formal proton. And while this was good, I noticed that there's in fact a missing singlet of the C2 position corresponding to the C2 proton, and I attributed this to abnormal relaxation time. However, I could not confirm this further, and thus I explored this route no further. So instead I moved on to Series C using thiophene as my base, and took thiophene carboxyldehyde and subjected it to a reaction similar to before to afford a nitroalkene 10C within 9% conversion. Unfortunately, this low conversion rate was once again the result of this persistence of the double aldol product and this 1,2-nitrohydroxy intermediate. This time around, I was not able to separate out the nitroalkene from the hydroxyl intermediate, but from the NMR we can see from these vinylic signals and these methylene and methyne signals that nitroalkene 10C is in fact the major product in the mixture and thus can be taken forward. So I took the crude mixture forward and subjected it to a lithium reduction to afford this ethylamine 11C. And successful reduction was confirmed by these methylene signals below the water peak, which I was able to resolve further through 2D NMR experiments. And so I was finally able to explore the cyclization of this thiophene-based amine with isatin, and I used the same conditions as before in an attempt to obtain my imine product. However, after the allotted reaction time, I'd observed no conversion. So instead, I added my BF3 etherate and heated the reaction to 40 degrees in an attempt to get this thiophene-based Spiroindolone. However, it was not working, or there was some level of conversion. So in a Hail Mary, I isolated the product over a day and obtained this. Now initially, the spectra looks quite pretty. However, it actually corresponds to my starting material, isatin, and it failed. However, there is a silver lining, and that comes in these small baseline peaks, which I believe to correspond to this cyclization product. So, despite not being able to obtain either my benzothiophene-based or thiophene-based scaffolds, I subjected the imine of 13A and the scaffold 14A to some preliminary biological evaluation. In this, I found that the imine is inactive, so it's for anticloplasmodium activity, and what I found is that imine 13A is inactive, but my scaffold has an IC50 value of 6.7 micromolar. Now the difference in this activity can be attributed to the spirocycle, which as I said before is an important pharmacophore, and thus proves that I do in fact have a bioactive structure worth exploring further. The difference between the scaffold and its inspiration spargine can be attributed firstly to these lack of substituents, but also because I tested my indole-based spiroindolone as a racemic mixture. So to conclude and present some future work, I have successfully synthesized this indole-based spiroindolone starting from indole, and in future I would like to do it enantioselectively selectively using a chiral acid promoter. And then for series B and C, I need to explore my initial reactions and improve the yields so that I can further investigate the cyclization to afford these two products. I also think it would be worth exploring the cyclization of these double aldol products as they are clearly very prevalent. So thank you to everyone who guided me along the way, especially my supervisors, Dr. Warwan Rylands and Prof. Hunter, and then everyone in the lab who assisted me throughout. Everyone wants lunch.
Thank you. You mentioned that there has been some literature looking at those substituents on the original drugs,
Yes.
I'm interested to know if you could take any learnings from the literature with regards to those substituents, given that the compound we tested that showed much lower activity, around 6.7 micromolar. Obviously that's a massive drop in activity, and so those substituents are clearly important. But yeah, what sort of was shown in literature with regards to how you can, what substituents you can vary to maintain activity?
So because I was looking at, namely to look at the central scaffold, I didn't actually consider what substituents they had explored, but I think my first step would be to make these, because I was primarily looking to compare the effect of this pi excessive ring on the activity, and thereafter I would most likely just make the spargine scaffold with the substituents and the varied ring, because it is relatively simple to start with a functionalized starting material. If that answers your question.
I just think you might need to keep those substituents and just change one thing at a time, because you're trying to change the substituents and the core, but maybe keep the substituents and just switch out the nitrogen results.
So in the interest of time and available reagents, that's why I stuck to just a simple scaffold, but in future I would definitely explore that.
Yeah, so that's just a recommendation.
Next, Catherine, Roger.
Was the supervisor, I would like to ask a question. That is, what do you think about that formulation through the metal hedge and exchange of the 3-bromo-benzothiophene? Do you not think that possibly it underwent metal hydrogen exchange and put the formyl group in the 2 position and retained the bromine?
So I did actually explore that, and I subjected this to a mass spec, and what I found is that there was no splitting as the result of any bromine being left behind.
But you see, what molecular ion did you get?
So I can show you
But did it correspond to just a straight formyl derivative? Because with mass spec, of course, you might have got fragmentation.
Right, yeah, so there wasn't a clear mass peak because this does not ionize well, and so I couldn't really draw many conclusions, but from it, based on the splitting of these signals, and that the fact that this is a literature compound, I purely went from that. I did do it at the C3 position, but also this position is more nucleophilic or electron rich.
But that CH is very unlikely to be relaxed in the way that you indicate. So its disappearance doesn't make sense.
it doesn't, but what I did find are several papers actually, for some arbitrary reason, is that they are doing a deuterium exchange on the C2 position, and I can't give an answer as to why they want that, but there is evidence that this particular aldehyde does undergo deuterium exchange at C2, so I also thought that that might be a reason for its disappearance, but that's why I didn't pursue it further.
Thank you, Roger. There's still time for questions for Justin and Anna.
Is there any reason why you didn't consider the thick pipe chemistry?
So I'm not sure, but what I do know is that this is the project that was handed to me. But it was suggested when I spoke to Wade about my project, and I think that would be an interesting future work because these reactions are not green, and I know you're interested in green chemistry, but this is firstly just a preliminary attempt to get these spiroindolones and then see can we actually produce it with it in a green way.
So keep it in that we need it,
But
but it might be also. Sorry, don't bring us into any more questions? I have a quick question. Is for the benefit of some of our undergraduate attendees today. I think it was on this slide where you mentioned relaxation. Could you explain what you mean by co-relaxation, especially with the animal theory that you know?
okay, so from my understanding is that the nuclei align themselves in the magnetic field of the NMR instrument, and essentially it pulses it and moves the alignment to 90 degrees and then measures how long it takes for it to return to normal, and while it's spinning around it essentially records that and then gives you these peaks after some Fourier transformation. And so if it has a weird relaxation time and it takes too long, it won't actually observe it, or if it's too quick, it won't observe the relaxation time.
Perfect. Thank you. You got that. On that note, I'll give you some time to relax a bit, go for lunch, and then maybe